Okay, good afternoon and thank you. Firstly, an apology for Mr. Pena. He's the country focal point for the GI-WACAF. But we ably assist the Department of Transport. I think SAMSA has been quite close to the action, so we can take you through what we've been doing for the past 2 years. So the presentation outline just gives you the National Oil Spill Contingency Plan. I'm sure I won't go into too much of detail. I'm sure you're quite familiar with what the requirements are. Then we cover the area of coverage, the vessel monitoring. Why do we revise our National Oil Spill Plan? What's different in the new? The introduction of IMS, how we going to implement the NOSCP, and then the legal instrument in terms of the OPRC bill. You heard Julian talk about the legal process, the legislation being one, and then the processes. So for South Africa, we try to run both the legal and the processes at the same time. And then we close out with just the expectations from GI-WACAF for 2020-2021. So, as you may be familiar, we have a coastline of about just over 3,000 kilometers. And we flank both on the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean, so we have a significant amount of challenges and different challenges on both sides of the country. We see risk of spillage, approximately 19 million tons of crude oil being imported to South Africa annually. And like most countries, there's threat of passing ships, it's a fire, collision, and so forth. But the new kid on the block for South Africa under Operation Pakisa is also to speed up exploration and exploitation from an oil and gas perspective. So one of the contingencies we need to take care of is the fire and blowout from offshore installations that can cause a spill. So in terms of government policy, we have a comprehensive maritime policy that has been promulgated by the Department of Transport. It has a whole host of elements and desired outcomes. So one significant desired outcome is the policy statement 21, which talks on department in cooperation with other departments and agencies to maintain a comprehensive contingency plan to ensure compliance with the provisions of the OPRC. So that's top on our list. So the area of coverage, just to give you a geographical picture of where we are, and just to note also further south in the southeast section of this map is also the Marian Islands for which South Africa is responsible. The maritime traffic, you've seen the slide earlier this morning that's given you the satellite AIS picture of the main arteries, and this just gives you for South Africa what we cannot see with the naked eye, but there's a significant amount of traffic along the South African coast. This map is quite busy, but for those that have a particular interest in the offshore oil and gas, you are able to pick this up from the Petroleum Agency South Africa's website, giving you the various blocks that have been allocated. This is a very busy slide. I don't need to test your eyes on this one, so the website will be more than effective for later review. Okay, why review the oil spill contingency plan? 2007, the work had started. I think my colleague had also mentioned that earlier today. But then in 2010, 2012, South Africa was involved in a project, the Western Indian Ocean Marine Highway Coastal Contamination Prevention Project. And that's the first taste that we have received in terms of IMS, so to change the emergency response model for the country. So it's taken a number of years to get to the point of where we're at now. I'll give you an update on where the national plan is. And then it talks current legislation, framework, regulate shipping, both from the oil rigs as well as offshore platforms. And then we took particular note of the IMO guidelines published in 2012 on incident management system and how to structure yourself so that there's consistency. Then on in 2016, under the leadership of the Interministerial Committee, we had established the Interim Incident Management Organization for the country. So what's different in the plan is that it is IMS as a preferred emergency response model. It's one reporting point, and it covers both shipping and offshore oil and gas. And the big change is to move from a job perspective to an IMS, and we see greater interaction with our national disaster management centers. So if you We've got 9 provinces in South Africa, so each province has its own fair share of bureaucracy. So through the Interim Incident Management Organization, we managed to break down those barriers. So it leaves greater coordination with local, provincial, national disaster management plans and various responders. So this is theoretical knowledge of IMS. I'm not going to run you through this. You know what the IMS aims for, what it provides for, and what's the benefits of using such a system. This just unpacks IMS for those that are not familiar with the various functions: incident command, planning, operations, logistics, and the finance. So the IMS structure for South Africa was endorsed by the Interministerial Committee 25th of October 2016. I'm sure that's not a site, that picture is not a site that you want to see. Sorry. So this is a picture you don't want to see of your shoreline. So through some of the activities of GI-WACAF from 2016, we firstly needed to establish IMS, and we have predetermined departments that will lead specific functions in South Africa. So with regard to incident command functions, we see there's the Department of Transport and SAMSA. Under the operations, also the Department of Transport. Under planning, it's predetermined environmental affairs, and under the logistics, we've got National Disaster Management Center, and the finance and admin, the P&I fund. So this organization, top right, you see the structure for shipping. And we went through the same process to identify and predetermine which would be the lead departments when it comes to the offshore oil and gas. So here again, it's pretty much the same departments, except for the finance, the green block. That would be led by the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. So there's one change. So if you notice on the slides, there's dotted lines. It means that in each of these, where the dotted lines are, that industry would also be involved, and we would require their assistance in case of emergency response. So how would we go about implementing the National Oil Spill Contingency Plan? We've taken firstly the letter of accepting accountability. So in all of those blocks where we've identified lead departments, we then made a point of those departments making a nomination of an individual or individuals to either lead or be deputies for those specific functions, and in so doing, they're accepting accountability for each of those blocks. So if there is an incident from an offshore oil and gas sector, we know what the immediate respondents is to fill each of those blocks from the outset. And the same would go for the shipping. The next point that we moved on in terms of the NOSCP is a multi-party agreement. I'll give you the specific objectives of the multi-party agreement in a couple of slides on. So the first part of the multi-party agreement, and this is what we've put in our OPRC bill as well, is firstly to work together, for parties to exert their responsibilities, for them to respond, which is the most important, because quite often people take the responses to do nothing. Then to undergo training, and also to be part of exercises that may be planned, both from an industry perspective as well as from government. So one of the key focus areas, you don't want to introduce an animal into the room and then you find nobody knows how to deal with it. So we've gone the route of training and institutionalization of IMS if it's going to be contained in our plan to train individuals for that. So to date, with the combined efforts of GI-WACAF through 17 and 18 in terms of training that's been provided, together with industry and some of the private companies that have sent out invitations for members of government to also attend those courses. To date, we said the total number of courses that have been attended since 2015 is 276, and the number of personnel that have been trained is 104. So the number of institutional officials trained is also at 29. So this is how we intend dealing with it. So we did not go ahead and approve the National Oil Spill Contingency Plan with a new emergency response model, purely on the basis that we needed to make sure that everybody understood IMS and its functionalities. So this is just a picture to prove, yes, this is what we are doing in terms of training. There are one or two familiar faces. I think the one on your extreme right you've seen speak this morning. Thank you, Mr. Brevi. So 2017, 2018, we had the first joint exercise. 2018-19, we had a tabletop exercise, and 2019-20, November this year, that's next week, we intend having a third tabletop exercise. The reason why we have not moved ahead, the plan was to have in 2019-20 to do a tabletop, was to do a functional, and 2021 to do a full scale, is that we feel that we have not trained people sufficiently enough in order to do a full scale using the IMS, so we've had to push it back another year. So we also need to deal with oil. Sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. The industry oil spill contingency plans. If you take note of the blocks that I showed you earlier in terms of offshore oil and gas, is how do you approve the oil spill contingency plans for offshore installations? So one of the requirements is for industry to make sure that it's aligned with the National Oil Spill Contingency Plan. So the table of contents from your National Oil Spill Contingency Plan needs to cover the same elements in terms of a framework. The provisions of the draft OPRC bill, there's points 1 through to 16. There is some changes, because last week we had, and that's a milestone that has been achieved, is that the draft OPRC bill was presented to Cabinet and it will soon be put out for public comment. So there's a slight changes to the elements contained from this 1 to 16, so it's further unpacked. I'll provide that to Emily, so she'll add that to a new, when she provides you with a disc at the end of the session. So there is a draft OPRC bill that was presented to Cabinet, and that for us is a significant milestone under the GI-WACAF assistance programs, as well as the activities of the interim management organization in South Africa. So our expectations from government and industry, firstly, the National Oil Spill Contingency Plan, Volume 1 and 2. We've broken it down in Volume 1 just to give you the overarching principles of the National Oil Spill Contingency Plan. We call it the spine. And Volume 2 will provide greater details in terms of how the actual activities contained in the plan. So depending which department you're from, you are able to then make particular reference, for example, on response strategies, waste management, etc. We also need to make sure that government and industry understand their roles and responsibilities within the NOACP. We require them to sign a multi-party agreement and prioritize key training, IMS training for key personnel, and that we have a properly constituted incident management organization. And it is the intention of, once we have the OPRC Act in place, that we'll officially launch the incident management organization for South Africa. And then finally is provide comments on the OPRC bill once it's published. So with regard to South Africa's expectations for 2020-21 from GI-WACAF, this is kind of a wish list, and I'm sure the project champions will take particular note of. I can see Ms. Patricia is picking ahead. Thank you. Okay, I think there's about 10 slides that give South Africa's wish list. So we'll start with slide number 1.
Ravi, it's out of focus, we can't read it.
You can't read it, okay. So firstly, I think that's an easy one, is to invite South Africa to participate in regional oil spill exercises and training. And then the next one is to provide training in South Africa for IMS 300, 400. And then the significant ones is role specific. We found through just the overarching understanding the principles of IMS, you need to really understand the function specific roles. And for that, there hasn't been significant amount of training being conducted. Then we move on to IMO courses, so level 1, first responders, then level 2, supervisor, on-scene commander, level 3, administrator and senior management. And I think Julian had a few bits of information on waste management, oil dispersant usage, and provide train-the-trainer. I think one of the challenges we have, and I'm sure it's other countries in the region, is the cost of training. So if we need to secure the services of consultants, or it can be quite significant. So one of the requests coming from South Africa is a train-the-trainer, so that we can have a kind of regionalization on certain elements. Then we move on to number 3, is facilitate functional exercise in April 21. So that's one of the requirements. The next one will be next year. This year is the tabletop in November, so 2021 which requires some assistance in terms of functional training. Thank you.